Good evening. It's February 2nd of 2016. We're here for a regularly scheduled Brattleboro Selectboard meeting. We want to welcome everybody who's watching us on television, whether live or recorded. We want to welcome everybody who's in attendance at tonight's meeting. Welcome to members of the press, ASL interpreters, members of the staff, and BCTV operators and technicians. We convened at 5:30 and went into executive session to discuss contract matters, labor relations, matters with employees, other personnel matters, and probable litigation where general premature public knowledge would place the municipality and people involved at a substantial disadvantage. Having risen from executive session, we're here ready for our public meeting. No decisions were made in executive session. The first item on tonight's public agenda is to approve the minutes from January 12, January 19, and January 25. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes as presented?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from January 12, 19, and 25 as presented. Is there any comments, questions, edits from anybody on the board? Anybody who's in attendance read those minutes and have anything to say about them? Hearing no comments, all those in favor of approving the minutes from January 12, 19, and 25 as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda is chair's remarks. I guess it's nice to be back to every other week meetings. Other than that, I've got no other comments. We'll look forward to it snowing sometime. The next matter on the agenda is town manager's comments.
And I have none this evening, thank you.
Next matter on the agenda is select board comments and committee reports. Anybody on select board?
Nothing.
Next matter on the agenda is public participation. If there's anybody who's in attendance who's got anything to say about a matter that's not on the agenda, this would be a good time. Anybody want to speak during public participation?
All right, meeting's adjourned.
All right. Excellent.
We're out of here.
Next matter on the agenda is liquor commissioners. We're ready for a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed or abstaining?
Who said so
That
moved?
I
carries.
said so moved.
John was
I'm sorry.
We do have a
John
motion.
moves.
I moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
I slept through it.
Well, I was told that for procedural motions, there was no discussion. I just let it run ahead.
I think
I
everybody
got
said.
corrected last time by Mr. Reichman. So the first matter on the liquor commissioner's agenda, I'm sorry, is a request for a second-class liquor license for Best Vittles Ever Inc. Is there anybody from Best Vittles Ever Inc. here?
Yay.
All right, well, why don't you come up and take a seat at the table there, and you can introduce yourselves, please, and use this as a little bit of free advertising to anybody who's watching on TV. Tell us what business you're at and what you're looking for.
Thank you very much. I'm Steve Bonnet,
I'm Bruce Bonnet.
and we are two of the three principals of Best Vittles Inc. And actually, it has Best Vittles Ever on the agenda, but the name of the entity is actually Best Vittles Inc., doing business as Green Mountain Market and Deli. The third principal of the company is our brother Terry, who is coaching a basketball game tonight, so he won't be here. We are presently constructing a building up on Marlborough Road, and hopefully that's going to be done in another month or so. We haven't had any snow, so that's worked out well for us from that aspect. What we're looking at doing up there is having a combination deli and bakery. Primarily, we would be selling pizza, freshly made sandwiches, comfort foods. So if anybody wants to stop and they don't feel like cooking, which is what happens to me most of the time, there'll be some prepared meals, chop suey, macaroni and cheese, things of that nature with the freshly made sandwiches. The reason we're here tonight is, in addition to the bakery, the fresh baked goods, we're also looking for the second-class license because we're going to have some convenience items, primarily the staples, such as beer and wine. So that's why we're here with this application for takeout. We would look to sell primarily local products if we can, but it would be more than that. So people can come in, pick up some bread, milk, and some beer and wine, and then go home and enjoy themselves.
Excellent. Anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Barnett?
It's a nice-looking building.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's coming along well, we're pleased, thank
Yeah,
you.
Fits in well with the character
it
of
really
the area.
does. No, it fits in great there.
That was our goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Now, was that property owned by, at one time by the mobile home company or by the Tri-Park or?
It was the Record family.
Record
who owned-
that's what- yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
they
Yeah.
owned the park, and
Yep.
then this was one of the last pieces, and it was in the trust, and we bought that property out from the trustees. Yeah.
Some floodproofing you had to do to put the building in that location?
We did not, believe it or not.
know, I think it's so
It's
tiny.
just barely above
Right.
the floodplain.
The elevations are, yeah.
Right,
Just
It was a
barely.
big issue with Cumberland
Yeah.
Farms when they were going right in nearby.
right.
Any other questions from the board? Peter, if you would just briefly talk about the process and the review for this liquor license application?
So our town clerk, Annette Cappy, is the collector of the documentation, and she does the initial review, make sure that everything's in order, and then the applications of this type are thoroughly reviewed by both the police and fire department, and everything has checked out, so we're happy to recommend approval.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in attendance who has anything that they'd like to say or any questions they want to raise about this second-class liquor license application by Best Vittles, Inc.? Well, I guess we're probably ready for a motion.
To approve the second-class liquor license for Best Vittles, Inc., DBA Green Mountain Market and Deli.
We have a motion to approve second-class liquor license for Best Vittles, Inc. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Good luck to you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very
We
much.
appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Next matter on the agenda is, on the Liquor Commissioner's agenda, is a special event permit request for the Harris Hill Ski Jump, both for Charles Dodge, doing business as Putney Mountain Winery, and Whetstone Station Restaurant Brewery. I guess they're going to be offering alcohol, beer, and wine for sale down there at the bottom of the hill. Is there anybody from the Harris Hill Ski Jump here to talk with us tonight?
There is.
Do you want to come to the table and
Certainly,
talk with us?
thank you.
Oh, you both signed on the discipline line. Send it back, please.
I should just sit here like this.
I hope you're hoping for snow.
We just want cold weather.
Cold
weather,
That's
we
true.
need-
We
Cold
want
weather to
everybody
make
to
snow.
hear very clearly that we can make snow, and as long as we
Right.
have the cold weather, we're scheduled to make snow next week, so the event will take place,
Okay.
as always. You won't be standing on snow, you might be standing on mud, but we will
We've
be...
done that before.
We have, but we'll definitely be having a competition. Just a little bit about the competition. It takes place on the weekend of the 20th, 21st. A little different for our usual dates. We shifted our dates by a week, mostly so that we weren't competing with some bigger hills that would prevent us from getting the competitors that we were hoping to receive. This weekend is going to be a really advantageous weekend for us because the Junior Nationals event is being held in Salisbury, Connecticut, the Tuesday immediately following our event. So that benefits us because a lot of the Junior National competitors have already signed up to join us in Brattleboro. So we already have a field of close to 30
Yeah.
competitors from Steamboat, Central, all over the United States.
Yeah, so we'll have the best junior jumpers in the nation coming to our event, and then we'll also have 2 athletes from Austria, and we'll have 4 athletes from Slovenia. So an international event. We're hoping for a couple of kids from Canada as well, but they haven't gotten back to us yet. But once again, a great international event with some of the best jumpers in the country and in the world.
And a part of that event is that we have a beer tent at the bottom of the hill.
Yes.
And we are here tonight to request permission from the Select Board to be able to have a permit to serve beer and wine. We do very closely monitor and ID anybody going in and out of the tent. We ID people, and the people that are actually serving the liquor also have very strict ID regulations.
How many years have we been doing that now, having the beer tank? Is this the 3rd?
Oh, no longer than that.
Is it longer?
5 or 6
Yeah,
years?
5 or
Is
6,
it
I
really?
would think.
Wow.
And we do have the police department present at the hill, so
Oh, yeah, yeah.
it's always been a pretty safe event for us.
Any other questions or comments from anybody on the board? Does anybody who's in attendance have any questions or comments about the request for special event permits for the ski jump on February 20 and 21?
I just see that they're making a movie about Eddie the Eagle.
I know, and it's going
Yeah.
to be released right after our event. We're really disappointed.
Now, wasn't he here?
He was here.
He was.
He was here about 12 years ago.
That's right, yeah. No, I saw that on TV the other night.
Thanks for the plug, John. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Peter, same procedure that it's been vetted by town clerk and by police and fire, and everybody's in approval.
Yes, sir.
All right. If there's no other comments, I guess we're ready for motion.
I move that we approve the special event permits for Charles Dodge doing business as Putney Mountain Winery and for Whetstone Station Restaurant and Brewery to sell alcohol at the Harris Hill Ski Jump on February 20th and 21st, 2016, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell your friends and
So
family.
just pray for cold weather.
It's the next one.
Well, the snowmaking equipment is pretty loud.
Oh, you
wasn't here.
Oh, yeah, for a week and a half.
Sure.
No zoning permit or nothing.
I know.
Next item on the agenda, right next door, not over the hill, right next door to me.
Oh, go ahead.
Next item on the agenda is special event permits for the Cabin Fever Food and Drink Festival at the River Garden on February 19th. We have somebody here for the River Garden. You want to come up to the table and tell us about this event, please? After you introduce yourselves.
I'm Erin Fagley with Strolling of the Heifers, an assistant to the executive director.
I'm Krista, the current Strolling of the Heifers intern and the coordinator of Cabin Fever.
Excellent. So you want to tell us about this event, one of you or both of you?
Cabin Fever is February 19th from 5 to 8 p.m. and sort of a kickoff for the Harris Hill Ski Jump. It's a fundraising event for Strolling of the Heifers, where people come to the River Garden to sample and purchase specialty foods, fine spirits, wines, and craft brews while listening to live music. Tickets are $20 at the door, and we check ID, and the alcohol vendors will check ID as well. I have talked to Tom Cran and have gone over sample sizes with our vendors.
Excellent. Anybody on the board have any questions? What kind of publicity and marketing are you doing for the event?
We've done Facebook, and we've sent out newsletter as well, marketing this event to our larger list of folks who are interested in what we do.
Excellent.
So when somebody comes in, they pay $20, do you give them something?
They get marked on the hand, and then
Okay.
they get tickets as well.
Anybody else on the board have any questions? Is there anybody who's in attendance who's got any questions about these series of special event permits, I take it, Peter, once again, same procedure, that this has been reviewed by the town clerk and police and fire, and everybody's comfortable with proceeding?
That's correct.
All right. Well, I guess we're ready for another motion.
I move to approve special event permits for the following vendors for the Cabin Fever Food and Drink Festival, sponsored by Strolling of the Heifers at the River Garden on Friday, February 19th from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Whetstone Station Restaurant and Brewery, Champlain Orchards, Stone Cutters Spirits, Caledonia Spirits, Vermont Distillers, Inc., 14th Star Brewing Company, LLC, and Honorer Winery and Vineyard, Inc., doing business as Honorer Winery and Jayville Brewery.
Is there any further discussion about that motion to approve special event permit for Friday, February 19th? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thanks so much for coming. Good luck with that event.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any other business to come in front of us as liquor commissioners?
Just one thing, and I didn't want to,
Yeah.
you know,
Mess them up.
mess them up at all, but does it seem like we give out an extra large amount of these lately?
It does.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying
it's
it's-
really accelerated.
I mean, it really
I
has.
keep expecting the coalition to be here at some point.
Yeah.
and say, what
I
are you
mean,
guys
and
up to?
I'm just curious as to why, because I've been on the board for a long time, in years back, and
I
I
know
don't.
one of the Vermont breweries, this was identified as the best beer in the world.
Right.
So we've got a reputation.
Oh, I know.
We have more breweries per capita than any other part of the planet.
And that
So it's a big part of the economy.
No,
and
it's
people are
just
doing more events.
I know they're doing more events. I worry. I just worry sometimes that we're exceeding our capacity. That's all. It's just an inquiry. That's all.
Well, what I would suggest is that sometime in the next 1 to 4 months, maybe we could look at the frequency of special event permit requests, maybe over the course of the last 2 to 4 or 5 years, so we get a sense as to whether it really is changing, and if so, how and why. And then we can talk with the town clerk about experiences.
And ladies,
that
this
there
is
might
no
be.
reflection.
No, this isn't nothing.
Okay, so that's, I just want.
What experiences may be like in other
Right,
in
in
other
other
parts of the
areas,
state,
right.
in other areas,
Right, I'm just-
and to decide whether.
Because maybe it is a common thing. You know, I know up in Burlington, I don't know. I
Well, we got
just,
the love crawl, we've got
Right.
the Friday night thing, and now we got the ski jump.
well, it just seems like
It's 3 in the month.
every other or third meeting, we're giving out lots of special permits. Is it just me that
No.
is?
No.
No, but to me, though, I don't want to characterize it as a bad thing.
No,
It actually may be a good thing for our community, so I don't want to characterize, I don't want people out in TV land to think that I think it's a bad thing.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying, you know, there's this connotation with liquor and with, you know, just with liquor, you know, and that, you know, we've always said, do we have too many outlets for beer and wine and liquor? Do we have, you know, so I'm just bringing it
No,
up
I know,
because,
The other inquiry, of course, is whether this raises a question about the way in which we're individually reviewing each and every application, and whether it's necessary for us to be doing that.
Exactly, you know,
And
that's the other
so
thing.
we
Right.
could just take a comprehensive look at the way in which the board is
Yes.
regulating
Right.
special events and other vendors in order to assess whether it's the right thing
Right.
and whether any changes are necessary. So sometime, what is this, February, you know, sometime.
Oh, no.
Sometime
June,
before,
June,
sometime
July.
before 4th of July.
Yeah.
Okay.
Be
Yeah.
nice.
So because
Cool,
Kate-
thanks for bringing that up. No, that's very helpful.
Kate's chamber hat came out, so I could see that.
Wait a second, Annette?
I might just add a little bit of history to what you were saying, John. I think the special event permits are relatively new. They've
Right.
only been in existence for maybe 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And I think they were, the legislature approved the special event. They already had a request to cater permit. So if you were selling alcohol, you could take it off premise. But this was to cater to so many mini microbreweries
Right,
and
right.
distillers. But I think there are more and more are popping up around the state, but not all of them go to the town select boards. I think we're one of the few towns where you do approve.
So that would be good.
Let's see if it's something that we want to keep doing and just try to get a sense of what the volume has been and what the experience is like around the state. Yeah, cool. All right. Any other business to come in front of liquor commissioners? Hearing none. We're ready for motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners. So we have a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? I think that was 5-0.
It was.
Next matter on the agenda is unfinished business, police fire facilities project. So there are two broad topics for discussion with respect to police fire facilities project today. First one, we had potential debt schedules distributed for us to begin considering what it would look like to do a 20 or a 25 or a 30-year bond on the currently recommended alternative from Select Board to Town Meeting, which is the Black Mountain Road alternative. So we'll talk about the debt schedules, although we don't need to make a decision at this point about financing. And then the second item is to schedule the special representative town meeting and the informational meeting before that special meeting. So Peter, you and or John would begin just by talking a little bit about how we came to look at 3 different alternatives for the potential new debt and what the charts show.
Sure. I'll give an overview and John can chime in with details if he has something to add. We've been working mostly with 20-year debt service schedules as you've looked at the different alternatives, and then even as you focused in on the Black Mountain Road alternative and chose to send that one forward for town meeting consideration, what we were showing was the 20-year schedule. We early on in this process had some discussion about the positive implication for the tax rate of a 25 or 30-year bond repayment, but that it comes with the offsetting downside of a larger total overall interest cost because you're borrowing the money for a longer period of time.
And so, 10 more years of payments.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so all in, you pay less per year, other than in that first peak year. There's an irony to this, which is that first peak year actually hits you hard, or I should say not the first peak year, the first partial year before you hit the peak year, hits a little harder in the longer term borrowing because it's interest only, because there's more interest to pay. So it's a pretty square trade-off there. If we go to the bond market, we can go with 20, 25, or 30. They're equally marketable. You've got cost estimates in front of you for what that looks like in terms of how much benefit we get on the tax rate versus the overall implication. And it's to refer to the backup, for instance, to compare the 20 and the 30, the total overall cost of all the payments for both the original debt and the additional debt is $18.7 million for the 30-year bond versus $16.9 million for the 20-year bond. So about $1.8 million additional cost over the entire payback period. But because that's spread over 30 years instead of 20 years, if you look, for instance, at the peak year of 2018, it's a 8.42 cent tax rate to carry the 30-year bond and a 9.28 cent tax rate to carry the 20-year bond. So it's really a pure policy decision. There isn't a right or wrong answer here. It's a matter of the trade-off of interest rate impact, tax rate impact versus overall long-term cost. The chairman asked that we prepare additional handouts, which you've got here at the table, We have some also for the audience if folks would like to look at it. It gives a little bit more detailed breakdown. I'll leave that to him to go into to the degree that he'd wish. The only other point I wish to make is that outside of this that is really fully within your discretion as to the duration of the bonds and the implications that we're talking about here in terms of the relationship between the tax rate and the interest payments. We also have talked about the possibility of working with a bank and the flexibility that that can provide. Some additional communication between John and the banks indicates that the market may not be very good right now and in the near future for going out for the longer periods of time with a bank. So while we still think that the bank loan is a possibility, there's some uncertainty about it, particularly at duration beyond 20 years. So that's not something that really needs to affect your thinking tonight as to where you think you might want to be going with this when it comes time in a few months to actually make financing decisions. But we want to make sure that you are aware that there may be less option available there than what we had originally thought.
I was doing some reading about bonds versus banks, and correct me if I'm wrong, John, but most on a long-term loan like this, you would bond it. You wouldn't go with a bank because the banks they're just kind of squirrely with their, what they require, and there's a lot more. Is there a lot more paperwork, and there's a lot more?
No, I don't think so. I think it all depends on the bank. I know that merchants had not been doing the long-term financing for municipalities until a couple of years ago. And then they got real aggressive in trying to bring in new customers for those long-term financing, school districts, municipalities.
Right.
And they've been very successful in doing that. And their portfolio now is very heavily weighted with these long-term municipal and school district loans. So they're starting to be a little more cautious in how aggressively they loan this money and for what period of time they loan it.
The bond bank is a certain, there's certainty to that. We know how to go into that process, and we know that we can do it for 20 or 25 or 30 years. And
you have to have certain credentials to be able to be bonded like that.
Yeah, well, you do a tremendous amount of documentation with the bond bank, and then the bond bank actually pools our need with that of many other public entities throughout the state, and they go to market with a much larger issue, bond issue than what we could do ourselves. And so that's favorable for all of us because we get a better interest rate by pooling our resources that way. So that piece, we know that what's in front of you is achievable. The exact numbers will be a little different when we actually go to market because the rate is likely to be a little different from what is being quoted to us today. But what we wanted to let you know tonight is that we're not suggesting that the bank loan option isn't available. We're suggesting that it may be there may not be as much interest at the banks, and therefore you should definitely be making your decision based off of this data, not off of believing that there's something better we can capture.
But, question and a point. The bank notes typically can be paid back. You can accelerate the payments and avoid a lot of the interest if the opportunity provides itself. And we'll look when it's time to actually make the move and borrow the money. We'll look at the interest rates and see where the best deal is. Right?
That's right.
So typically, are the banks a little lower than the bond rate these days?
They had been when we tested it last year. They had been.
That wasn't the case previously. The bond bank was actually, I think municipal bonds were cheaper, but recently, in the last several years, that's changed.
And if the indication is accurate that the bank market may be hardening up some, then that may change back again. So all of this is why you're not actually making a commitment one way or the other tonight.
It's fun to follow it. The way it looks to me, for the next several months, it's going to be a lot more interesting for banks to loan to people like us that have, for instance, taxing authorities, so they know they're going to get their money in order to stabilize their asset or their
portfolios.
Yeah, whatever that stuff is. And so we'll see. But I don't want to, I hear what you're saying, but if it's a better deal to bank, I would want us to look very carefully at going to the bank.
We completely agree, and that's why I tried to clarify that we're not suggesting that it has to be this way, but these are numbers that are more reliable than what we could bring to you from any kind of indication of what the bank market would allow us to do at this point.
Absolutely.
It'll be a few months before we'd actually be out borrowing, and at that point, you can make a concrete choice with real-time
There's
data.
another Fed meeting between now and then, 2 months.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I'll note that I asked town manager and the finance director to generate one more set of charts that broke out the tax impact from the old debt and the new debt over the 20, 25, and 30-year potential borrowing periods, so that people can see the original impact. This year, for example, in 2015, we were at 414 cents on $100 of assessed value from the original debt. We're already down to 411 in the current year, and next year we'll be at 4.08 cents. And then we're borrowing on top of that for 20, 25, or 30 years if we get authority from town meeting and we decide to proceed with that authority. So I asked them to prepare these charts just to separate out the old and the new and the old and new impact on the tax rate.
We're not going to decide this tonight, or are we?
No, the decision on financing will be made
After we know.
after the March 12 town meeting, probably after the March 19 town meeting, when the budget is adopted, and then probably after the petition period as well. Because we will wait, I think, to borrow money until after we know that the budget's not being rejected.
Sure.
Good idea.
Any other questions about the borrowing? I do find it pretty substantial difference. To borrow for 5 more years costs us $800,000 more total.
Oh, yeah.
And to borrow for 10 more years, it cost us like $1.8 million more.
Yeah, almost $2
And
million.
it almost seems like it's not worth it for the half a penny or penny
Right.
savings in any given year to spend
You
$2
have to
million
wait
more.
5 more years or 10 more years so that thing can be retired, so you
Right.
can bond something else.
Right.
It's crazy.
So at this point,
This did help, though.
yeah.
Yeah, thank
it's
you.
Good to look at.
Yeah.
And there may be town meeting representatives who think that we should do it over the longer term. And we'll just have to listen to
We'll
what
find
everybody
out.
says. All right, so that was one issue. Is there anybody who's in attendance who has any questions about the bonding-related, financing-related questions? All right, so then Peter, if you could talk with us a little bit about scheduling the informational meeting and the representative town meeting.
Sure. So, you've already declared that you intend to have the special representative town meeting on March 12th. We just need to have you formally approve the warning for that this evening and reiterate that that's when that meeting will be held. As far as the informational meeting leading up to that, we had proposed that it be held on the 2nd because that follows the same sequence that the regular annual representative town meeting does to hold the informational meeting 10 days prior to the actual town meeting. And we can do that. We've learned since we first put that forward to you that there is actually 2 separate meetings that are occurring at Academy School on that same evening. In the late afternoon, the school board is meeting, and then their Act 46 committee is meeting there at the same time as the informational meeting would be held. So there is the possibility that be a little bit tougher for parking and just more activity going on in the building. There would be more activity going on in the building that evening. We don't believe that it would prevent us from successfully holding the informational meeting if you'd like to proceed with this as planned, and we know that the room is available at that time. We have made inquiry about whether we could go on the 3rd instead of the 2nd in order to avoid any potential conflict with those 2 school meetings, and we don't have confirmation officially one way or the other on that. So based on what we do know and the belief that we can hold our meeting in one part of the building while the school is holding its meeting in another part of the building, and we, both can do what we need to do that evening. We would recommend that you approve Wednesday, March 2nd, with the doors opening at 6, the caucuses occurring at 6:30, and the informational meeting beginning at 7 o'clock at Academy School.
Just one question before I move that motion. The doors are going to be open anyway.
That's true.
So
That's a good
I'm
point.
just wondering, is there I mean, do people typically wait for, caucuses, where you have to wait until it's open?
I think
you have to be there?
Maybe before you answer that in that
Yep.
way, you can explain why you included in both this motion and the next motion the caucus aspect of the, for the warning.
Sure. We did that
It's not
because...
being Iowa.
Right, because the, not all of the seats are filled or will be filled. Even on the March 1st election, there will still remain some unfilled seats for each of the 3 districts. We thought it was appropriate not to wait until the informational meeting a week later for the regular annual representative town meeting, but to go ahead and include a caucusing opportunity for this special informational meeting and special representative town meeting to try to make sure that we have as much public participation as possible in this significant decision that's to be made. So that's why we included that. And on the question of the doors open, while we know that physically they will be open, I think it's probably appropriate for folks who are coming to this meeting for us to style it this way, because there'll be other activities going on in the school. Actually, frankly, there always have been. They just haven't been official public bodies meeting there, but there's usually school activities of one kind or another on the evenings that we're there. I think it's appropriate for us to tell people who are coming to this meeting that doors are opening for our purposes at 6 o'clock, so that they don't come, earlier or
Go to the wrong meeting.
Right, exactly.
All right, so when this date was circulated, you had some concern about having our meeting at the same time as the school board meeting and the Act 46 study group. Do you, you sent a communication saying, did you know it was the same time?
Right.
Are you comfortable doing this
Yeah,
at the
there's,
same time?
I just wanted to make sure that we knew that the music room would not be available, because that's typically a room that's used as part of the caucusing, and that really good signage goes up so people don't walk in the wrong room.
Right.
And
Sure.
think they're someplace where they're not, where they aren't.
Well, if that's okay, then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does anybody else on the board have any questions or comments about this request to notice our special town meeting for 3/12 at 8:30 in the morning, that's Saturday, and to do the informational meeting the Wednesday before, starting at 6 with the caucus at 6:30, with doors opening at 6, caucus 6:30, and the meeting at 7?
Just a quick clarification, as opposed to being the Wednesday before, it'll be actually the Wednesday 10
Wednesday and a
days
half
before.
before, right,
Yep.
10 days before. Anybody who's in attendance have any questions or comments about that? All right then, I move to approve as presented the warning for the special representative town meeting to be held on Saturday, March 12, 2016, starting at 8:30 a.m. at the Brattleboro Area Middle School. Now, what I want to do also is read the motion. Do you have the motion? No, this.
There you go.
Can I?
Sure.
Is it in here too? I don't. Oh, there it is, right there. All right, so I want to be clear. Given the advice we had from town attorney and bond counsel, there's going to be a single article for decision and discussion on March 12th, which shall an amount not to exceed $4,500,000 of the proceeds of bonds authorized at the October 20, 2012 Special Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Brattleboro be expended for the purpose of purchasing land and buildings at 62 Black Mountain Road, Brattleboro, Vermont, and renovating said lands and buildings into a town of Brattleboro police station instead of constructing the police station renovations at the Brattleboro Municipal Center as authorized at said special representative town meeting. And the voting on that will be by Australian ballot after we have our discussion. So we're not talking, as everybody knows, about, we're not voting on all the alternatives. We would only be voting on the $4.5 million to move the station up to Black Mountain Road, although all topics will be open for discussion relating to police fire at that meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of publishing that warning for the March 12 special town meeting, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Then I also move to schedule a special informational meeting to be held on Wednesday, March 2, 2016 at Academy School with doors to open at 6 p.m., caucuses at 6:30 p.m., and the meeting at 7 p.m. in preparation for the special representative town meeting on March 12 relating to the police fire project. Any discussion about the motion to set the special informational meeting on 3/2? Anybody who's in attendance? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. I think that's all the business under old business.
Can we like keep the 2nd and the 12th, like publish all that in one color, and then the 9th and the 19th, like in different colors so people know that they're like two different meetings and two different warnings and two different topics. In the overlap of days, I'm sort of being facetious, but the overlapping days and activities is going to be, I mean, we leave it up to Olga and Chris to make sure everybody understands it, but I'm Luke. I wound up circling and drawing arrows and stuff, so I knew what I was going to be voting on. It's a little complicated.
Well, we're meeting Wednesday and Wednesday for informational meetings.
And then Saturday and Saturday.
And then Saturday and Saturday for town meetings.
Yep.
And hopefully the press will make that way clear.
Yep. If
And-
that second Wednesday didn't come before the first Saturday.
Now you're making it unclear.
That's what I mean.
Well, stop it.
Okay, I'm done. And nobody's going to complain that it's too confusing. They'll all figure it out and we'll be fine.
And we'll be giving notice through the town clerk, is that fair to say?
Yep.
Yeah.
And at least
And on
Pete
the
is
town's
smiling.
website.
And on the town's website.
You guys will wait until the votes are all done and the money's in the bank and then you'll smile, right? Okay.
All right. So under new business, the first item on the agenda is to schedule the informational meeting and to confirm the date, time, and location for the March 19 meeting. Peter?
Yes, so, as Mr. Scholes just pointed out, the normal cycle that we would have, to have our regular annual representative town meeting on March 19th in the normal cycle, and then 10 days prior to that, on March 9th, the normal annual informational meeting to prepare for that regular town meeting. That's what's before you this evening. The 19th is obviously already scheduled and warned. So all you need to do this evening is just remind everyone that, you know, we do, as you've just been discussing, have 2 informational meetings and 2 town meetings this year. And you do need to take an action this evening to schedule the annual informational meeting. And we recommend that be for March 9th, 6 p.m. The doors opening at 6 p.m., caucuses at 6:30, meeting at 7 o'clock at the Academy School.
Any discussion? We're ready for a motion, please.
To schedule the annual informational meeting to be held on Wednesday, March 9th, 2016 at Academy School with doors to open at 6 p.m., caucuses at 6:30 p.m., and the meeting at 7 p.m. in preparation for the annual representative town meeting on March 19th.
We have a motion to convene an informational meeting before town meeting on March 9th, Wednesday, at 6 o'clock, 6:30, and 7 o'clock. Any further discussion?
David, just show up on a Wednesday and a Saturday for the next couple months.
Next
You'll be okay.
rest of my life, yeah.
You'll be okay.
Thanks.
Anybody who's in attendance have any comments, questions? Now, the informational meetings are at the Academy School gym, and the town meetings are at the multipurpose room at the middle school.
That's correct.
Excellent. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of scheduling the informational meeting for March 9th, please say aye. Aye. Everybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Any business have to be attended to with respect to the town meeting?
I'd just like to make one quick announcement, which is everything that we've just discussed and the actions you've just taken relate to the official meetings and the official actions related to the police fire decision and the regular annual town meeting. In addition, because of the importance of the police fire facilities project, we want to make sure that the public has available as much information as possible about what you're recommending and what will be considered at town meeting. And so we're in the process of scheduling some meetings to go out to community groups, organizations that normally hold meetings where they invite the public in. We're working to see if we can get out to several of those during the next month to make sure that we reach as broad an audience as possible in preparation for the meeting. So those are informal, unofficial as far as town business goes, but
Send
will
us
be
the dates, you know, when they're
absolutely
there.
sure. As those gel, we'll let you know which ones, you know, where we're going to be and when.
Great, thank you.
And we'll also be promoting that on the town's website and through the town's Facebook page and every which way we can. The point is to reach as many people as possible and have everybody as well informed as possible once we get to town meeting.
And I'm sure that all members of Select Board and all members of Police and Fire Department are prepared to talk with anybody who's got any questions about these things going forward. So we invite any town meeting member or any member of the public to contact any one of us to talk about the police fire project, because there's been a lot of discussion and we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to vet any concerns that they may have. Next item on the agenda is the 2016 Certificate of Highway Mileage. I don't see Steve, so Peter?
Right. So it's the same as you've seen year after year. It's an annual responsibility of the town to certify our highway mileage to the state. It's important because it relates to the funding formula for aid that we get in the maintenance of highways. And there is a small correction being made this year for a portion of an exit ramp that was previously not on our certification list. So it's actually adding 12 1,000ths of a mile to our total mileage in town. But as it's attached to Steve Barrett's memorandum dated January 8, 2016 in your backup, it is ready for your approval.
Anybody on the board have any questions about the Certificate of Highway Mileage? Is there anybody in attendance who has any questions about the Certificate of Highway Mileage? Looks like we're ready for motion.
I move that we approve the certificate of highway mileage for the year ending February 10th, 2016 as presented.
We have a motion to approve the Certificate of Highway Mileage. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you. So the next matter is certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards. Peter?
This is also an annual approval, and it's an important one because it certifies to the state that when we are doing road projects and approving roads in the community, that we will have them meet the appropriate state-approved standards. And in so doing, we not only maintain a safer, more consistent roadway system here in Brattleboro and throughout the state, but specifically here in Brattleboro, by participating in this and adhering to the state standards, we make ourselves eligible for more state funding when we get structures grants. We have a lower local cost share. And importantly, after disasters, we become eligible for a greater degree of aid in rebuilding these facilities. We recommend approval in the form that it is in your backup, attached to a memorandum dated January 20th. That is from Steve Barrett and Hannah O'Connell.
Anybody on the board have any questions about the proposed certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards and network inventory? Anybody in attendance have any questions about the certification of compliance? We're ready for motion.
I move that we approve the certification of compliance for town road and bridge standards and network inventory as presented.
Any further discussion on the motion to approve the certification of compliance? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda is a first reading of proposed amendments for changes to the, it's not the animal nuisance control ordinance, it's the animal control ordinance? What's it called? The animal and fowl ordinance.
There you go.
Would members of the police department and the town clerk like to come to the table and talk with us about amendments to the animal and fowl ordinance?
Fowl?
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Did you see all the crossings?
I know.
Want to start? You want me to start?
Go ahead.
Why don't you both introduce yourselves, please?
My name is Mark Kerrigan. I'm a captain with the Brattleboro Police Department.
And I'm Annette Cappy, town clerk.
Welcome. How can we help you tonight?
So the police department is requesting and recommending a number of changes to the animal and fowl town ordinance, mostly related to animals, not fowl. And I'll just briefly go through those. I think you have a memo in the modified ordinance itself. In general, the changes that we're requesting can be broken down into 4 basic categories. The first is definitions. You'll notice a number of changes in the definitions. Domestic pet was added as a definition so that the town can regulate the conduct of owners of pets regarding rabies that may contract rabies. Currently, the ordinance only relates to dogs or wolf hybrids that may contract rabies or have rabies that bite people. Including this domestic pet definition allows us to then incorporate that into the rabies section as well. Previously, only rabid dogs were regulated. That also matches the state law, having domestic pet added. There is a domestic pet definition in the state statute as well. Owner, you'll notice the definition of owner is modified to include domestic pets. That's also to reflect the state statute, to be more in line with the state statute, and also so that we can regulate potentially rabid animals. A dangerous dog or wolf hybrid was added. You'll see that's a new definition that was modified to provide a definition for section 320, which I'll talk about in a moment here. Section 320, you'll notice, was changed significantly, added significantly from 3 lines to multiple paragraphs. The reason for that is the current version of 320 as it's written is pretty vague. It's not very specific in how it informs citizens to comply with the ordinance. It also does not provide for any enforcement function or any processes for the town in the case of violations or when dangerous dogs or dangerous wolf hybrids are identified. So section 320 was almost completely rewritten, or was completely rewritten, to explicitly spell out what the expectations of the town would be regarding dangerous dogs and dangerous wolf hybrids. It also explicitly provides a process that citizens can go through to appeal decisions and designations related to their dogs. First, when it's designated as a dangerous animal, and then again, if the dog were a designated dangerous animal were to bite someone again or threaten someone again, there's another due process system built in. So there are two due process systems built in there to protect dog owners before they could potentially be deprived of the ownership of their dog. Language changes and clarifications. There were a couple of just sort of housekeeping things that were done. The ordinance was last modified, I believe, in 2003. Section 322 was completely deleted. That's not a service that the town provides at all anymore. You'll see there's a fee of $10 there for animal services that are provided, treat animals and that sort of thing. That was deleted because it's not something the town does anymore. Section 342, there was a section that was added just to sort of codify and put into the ordinance a quarantine option that is allowed by the health department and that is currently used by the town and the police department. It's just absent from the ordinance, so it just includes that process. Fines, you'll notice, are updated in here to just be updated as they haven't been changed in 13 years. And then you'll notice a new section 324 related to confinement of animals in vehicles. That's to protect animals that are kept in or left in hot cars in the summertime generally is when we have that particular issue or run into that particular problem. That's kind of an overview of the recommendations of the police department. I'm happy to take questions related to that, or I don't know if you want to have Annette brief you on her recommended changes as well, and then we can take questions collectively.
Yes, please, Annette, if you would walk through.
Okay. The reason that I'm here is that Section 327 has to do with dog fees, and that pertains to the town clerk's office. And it's relatively simple. In the past, well, first of all, state dog licensing fees are a combination of state fees and town fees. The state fees have always been enumerated within the ordinance, so each time the state changes their portion of the dog fees, we need to come back to you and have the ordinance change. And basically what this does is take out the enumeration of the state fees and just include the town portion of the fees. So it's sort of a change in the wording, and also it raises the fee for a neuter dog by $3 to be more in line with it, a little bit less than an unneutered dog, but more in line with what that fee is. So that's basically what the fee changes are.
I know there's also been a concern about minor increases in fees from time to time, and the possibility that we might change the language of the ordinance to allow select board administratively to make changes rather than changing it per ordinance. Is that included here? And if so, where? Or are we contemplating another change later on?
There's a similar impact here. It's not, we're not actually doing exactly that in this ordinance. As Annette described, what's going on here is that previously, in order to reflect changes that occurred at the state, we'd have to come back and have an additional action taken by the select board. So it'll be more efficient to travel just with whatever changes are made by the state over time. We'll take theirs, whatever it may be, and add ours to it. And so you won't have to make a change unless you're going to do something different with the town fee. So it accomplishes the same sort of efficiency that you described, but in this particular case, through a different means.
Okay.
Just one little typo I noticed on page 44 at the end of section 320. A person who violates this section shall be fined $8 rather than 800.
I will note that.
Okay. Wouldn't want to make that mistake.
Any other questions from anybody on the board about the reasons for these proposed amendments or their impact?
I don't have a question. I don't have a question on the reason, I just have a question on
Go for it.
general. When you folks came up with the section 320, because it is a significant change, is some of this do you do already, or, how did you come up with this?
So one of the reasons we came up with this is because there previously has been no specific system in place. And we were, at any time there would be a vicious dog that might bite a citizen multiple times, it was sort of a conglomeration of the town ordinance, the state law, and conferring with the town attorney about what the town's rights were regarding protecting citizens, what the owner's rights were, and every time it occurred, we kind of reinvented the wheel, and had to go through this process again. So because there was not a lot of specific information in here, I don't have a clear answer for you how it's usually handled, but this is kind of what we've always hoped for, a system that we could work through, and rules that could be followed with some due process for owners of dogs, so that we would have a process to go through and actions we could take.
Now the next when you just mentioned due process, is there an appeal? Do you know what the appeal application is now, or, because it says you can appeal, you know, you have to apply within whatever 7 days. Is there a process, what that process is?
Currently, there is no process.
Okay, but you'll have one if we say this ordinance?
Correct.
If we adopt this?
Right. The process that we're proposing is described in here. And that's what the process would be if you approved the modification to the ordinance. Currently, there is no process. As you'll see, it just says, a vicious dog is declared a public nuisance, and the owner of such animal shall keep it confined in a secure enclosure or chain of leash. And that's it.
Okay, because on page 44 at the top, it says the owner may appeal the dog's euthanizing to the town manager's select board. Such appeal application must occur. So I'm assuming there's going to be something that people have to fill out if they want to appeal it. Do you know what I mean? Or?
I do. So we haven't designed a form that's part of the ordinance. I think the proposed ordinance does require that it be in writing. Yep, delivered in writing to the police department or the town manager's office. So I don't know whether a form will subsequently be designed or not, but really I think if anyone just wrote a letter that said, please don't euthanize my dog, that would be considered an appeal.
That's sort of, I think, would need to be clear, because some, you know how people say, I don't want my parking ticket, and we had to do an appeal process for a parking ticket.
Right, but we do, there isn't a form to fill out for that. It just, it says similar to this, that you have to submit it and to whom you have to submit it, by when you have to submit it, and that it has to be in writing. But these days, we'll accept that by email as well as by letter or
Well, I just don't
whatever.
want there to be any confusion, because somebody's pet will be killed, and if they don't understand how they're supposed to appeal. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's worse. It's not like you have to pay the $10 parking ticket. If you're not clear and somebody's going to say, well, I did it a certain way, and you say that's not the way to do it.
I think your concern is very valid, but I think actually the way it's worded protects better against that kind of misunderstanding, because what we're saying is just give it to us in writing. We'll take it any which way as long as it's in writing, instead of having them have to fill out a specific form. Yeah.
And I will note that when a dog is first designated as a dangerous dog or wolf hybrid, and let's say they go through that appeal process and lose that appeal process, their dog has now been designated as dangerous. In that notification, it's in the ordinance here, they'll receive a copy of this ordinance so that we can make sure that they're familiar with the second part of what's to come if they continue to allow their dog to bite people. So there really was a lot of thought put into how can we make sure people really do understand the consequences of keeping and maintaining a dangerous dog to prevent that type of thing.
When you guys rewrite these ordinances and stuff, is there like a general rule of thumb, or is there across the nation of something you go by, or is it really individually by the town, or is there something that you use for a basis to write all these things up? I mean, because that's an extensive rewrite on 320.
So the Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns has a model ordinance or a model policy, and we looked at other towns, other cities. Burlington's policy, or excuse me, ordinance we looked at, and then once we do sort of modify that to what we think is best for Brattleboro, the town attorney's office takes a look at it as well to make sure that it complies legally with, because ultimately they would have to defend it. So that's kind of the process we go through, is we look at what other organizations are doing. VLCT usually has sort of a best practices ordinance that we look at, and then we adapt it to Brattleboro.
In fact, other municipalities have animal nuisance control ordinances. And they are much more specific than the language that's included here in the first place. I've been engaged in, when I was in private practice as town attorney, animal nuisance control ordinance litigation, and when you have specific requirements for how you control an animal, and then specific steps that are taken if those controls are not in place, it provides a much more structured setting for controlling dangerous animals, which is what the police are looking for, and then much more specific due process mechanism for owners who are trying to make sure that their rights are being protected. So I think this is a good set of changes here. Anybody else on the board have any questions about this, sir? Anybody who's in attendance have any questions about these proposed rewrites to the animal and fowl section of the town ordinance? All right, so what I will note, yes?
Yeah, I do.
Make sure to come to the microphone, please, and say your name. That's for the television, not for the room. Thank you.
You're welcome. The ordinance is
Say your
here.
name, I'm sorry.
I'm Dale, and the ordinance is here. It seems like the dogs, like, there was a dog that has been complained about a lot here in Brattleboro. And it's a big mastiff dog, and it confronted me even. And it's like, it's a dangerous dog. I don't know what became of it, but it had many complaints put in about it. So what is the formality here with a dog that's loose on the street without a leash, coming out of a house without a leash, and aggressively going up against someone? How many times does that happen before you do something?
Mark, can you speak to that, the way it currently stands, and then what would be in place?
The way it currently stands, and I just want to clarify, are you referring to a dog that's running loose or a dog that's actually aggressively threatening, like it's going to attack someone?
It's got a threatening, gonna attack somebody, and it's not on a leash.
Okay, if it's not on a leash, currently I'd have to look to locate exactly what it is. There is a dog at large section of the current ordinance, prohibited at large. There's a first offense and a second offense. First offense fine, and then if it happens again, there's a second offense fine. Our additions add a third offense, just another higher fine, third and subsequent offense rather than a second or subsequent offense. And then if a dog, so that's if a dog is at large. If a dog is attacking someone or threatening to attack someone, it's again under the vicious dog or wolf hybrid section as it exists today, merely commands a citizen who owns that dog to control it, has to restrain it. If you give me just one moment, I'll find that actual section here. Vicious dog or wolf, okay, the owner of such animal shall keep it confined in a secure enclosure or on a chain or leash. That's all the current ordinance says, is that a person is required to do that. It doesn't say specifically how they're required to do that or what the consequences are if they do not do that. The proposed ordinance does spell out exactly what they need to do, how they need to confine it, and then what the consequences would be if they did not.
Okay, so the proposed one that's not in there yet does have all that.
It would have features and details that would address the issue that you just described, yes.
All right, thank you.
And to be more specific, since this is a public reading, there's a policy, there's a procedure here for an animal being designated dangerous and for a person to appeal that designation. And then if the animal is designated as dangerous, there are specifics for the type of enclosure that has to be in place for the animal to be kept, including fencing that goes down into the ground with a cover on top. And then there's also provisions for what happens if that animal gets loose and attacks somebody, which goes all the way through euthanizing the animal, again with a mechanism for the owner to appeal that. Any other questions or comments? So I'll just note that the process in place in the town of Brattleboro for adopting amendments to our ordinances require a first public reading, a second public reading, a public hearing, and then a vote.
At the second reading, the
Right,
public
so
hearing.
a public hearing after the second public reading, and then after the public hearing is closed, a vote on adopting the ordinance. So what we've just had has been a public reading of proposed amendments to Chapter 3 of the town ordinances entitled Animals and Fowl. We've had an explanation of all the proposed changes to the Chapter 3 of the ordinance, and the specific wording of the changes to Chapter 3 of the town ordinance are now being subject to public reading and are available for public review on the town's website and somewhere else in Town Hall, at the town manager's office. So anybody who's interested in reviewing the specific changes can either find them on the town's website under our meeting materials or by coming to the town manager's office. Is there any other business to be taken care of in this first public reading of the amendments to Chapter 3 of the Animal and Fowl Ordinance? Next item on the agenda is...
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome.
And thanks for your work putting that together. The next matter on the agenda is the Design Review Committee. Peter, if you could speak to that, please.
Sure, you have a memorandum in your backup dated January 27th from Planning Services Director Rod Francis that gives you an update about where we are with the Design Review Committee. This was, of course, a new committee being created in furtherance of the provisions of the land use regulations that you adopted back in November. And so you've created the committee, you've appointed 2 members to the committee. There are 2 additional applicants, and staff was giving consideration to the fact that both of these people are well qualified and that it's a small committee that will meet only occasionally, but when it needs to meet promptly to address applications that have been filed with the town. And we believe that it would be advantageous to have an alternate member of this committee. So there'd be 3 regular voting members and then an alternate who could sit in for any one of those 3 when needed. And if you agree with that, then there would be 2 motions this evening. The first would be to expand the membership of the Design Review Committee to create that alternate position, and then to appoint 2 additional members, 1 as a regular member and 1 as an alternate member to the committee, and then we'll be fully constituted.
Anybody on the board have any questions about the proposal to expand the membership of the Design Review Committee to include an alternate position? Anybody in attendance have any questions or concerns about that? I move to amend the membership of the Design Review Committee to include 1 alternate member position for a 1-year term. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Do we have any nominations for the full member of the Design Review Committee?
Do you have to nominate them or just move them?
I nominate Tio Seni as a member of the Design Review Committee. Any nominations? Any other nominations?
I nominate Mary McLaughlin as the alternate.
Thank you. Any other nominations? We have nomination of Tio Seni as full member and Mary McLaughlin as the alternate for the Design Review Committee. Any further nominations? Any discussion about those nominations from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Peter?
Just note for the record that both of these appointments would be scheduled to expire in June of 2017.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of Tio Seni being a full member and Mary McLaughlin being an alternate on Design Review Committee, both through June 2017, please say aye. Aye. Everybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. So, we've had a resignation on the Planning Commission, and so I'm now going to announce forthwith committee vacancies.
Forthwith.
We have an Agricultural Advisory Board vacancies, 6 of them. 1 Arts Committee vacancy, 3 ADA Advisory Committee vacancies, 2 vacancies on a Conservation Commission,
I know.
and none on the Design Review Committee. We have 2 DRB Development Review Board alternate vacancies, 2 Energy Committee vacancies. We're looking for 2 fence viewers who by statute have to be legal voters of the town. We're looking for 1 member of the Honor Roll Committee, 1 member of the Planning Commission, 2 members of the Senior Solutions Advisory Council, and 1 member of the SEVCA Board. Anybody who's interested in serving on a committee, applications are available from the town manager's office
And on
and
the
online. And we will consider the application at the next select board meeting following its receipt. Is there any further business to come in front of tonight's meeting?
Nay.
We're ready for motion to adjourn.
So
We have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye, and opposed or abstaining. That motion carries 5-0. I want to thank everybody who's been watching our meeting on BCTV, whether live or recorded. I want to thank BCTV operators, our ASL interpreters, members of the press, members of the public, and staff members who attended. Good night.